So Kyle Shanahan is going to be the coach.
Yes.
We kind of know that.
Never in
And
doubt.
we were talking a little bit about Brock Purdy, but before we go too much into Brock Purdy, I think this is interesting. This is Steve Young on KMBR talking about how Kyle needs to reinvent himself.
Yeah.
And
call,
this
Steve.
is a pretty good little soundbite. I'm going to let you guys hear this one. This is our buddy Steve, who's phenomenal. He was on with Copes and Derek Papa on KMBR yesterday. And here's what he had to say about the Niners.
But just going through everything that's happened this season, the way it's gone, can you pinpoint maybe one thing that you've seen of what's caused this season to be a disappointment?
Well, it's all of it, right? It's Brandon's holdout, which in many ways was a theme. It wasn't him, but it was Nick and it was Trent, and it was every big name knew that, how do I say this? There was such a desire to be in the Super Bowl. You got to understand that's why I feel so terrible today for this Super Bowl window. I don't know how closed it is or open. We won't know, but just that it's not going to be as open as it was last year. And those guys that are down there that have such a desperation in a positive, in a really, not desperation is the wrong word, but just a longing to win it, to have one. And I just feel for them today because it just got to a distance right now that is super tough. And so you think about what happened this year. It started with people holding out for like maximum dollars, and that's not always the wrong thing. It's not. I'm not going to blame anybody, but it's and then people get hurt, and then there's also, we talked about what we call the Super Bowl hangover, which is just the emotional wherewithal that the team has to have. That's a collective. We talked about it last week, and they were tired. They're emotionally spent from the Super Bowl loss. It was brutal, and they needed some time to gather themselves. They needed September and a lot of October to gather themselves, and they needed to win those tight games in L.A., the tight game against the Cards. They needed to win those games that they should have had. They needed so they could find their foot about a couple weeks ago, like at Thanksgiving time, when all of a sudden I said last week that they're 7-3, and now they've got the emotion for it and the health for it and all the rest of it. And so they needed some things to break their way, and it didn't. And it's a collection of all kinds of things. Because remember, I told you also the whole league studied the 49ers.
Yeah.
They've been studying Kyle Shanahan for 2 or 3 solid years. They do that with Andy Reid. They do it with Kyle Shanahan. Those are the two guys that everybody studies. And everybody says, not again, not again, not again. And every defensive coordinator in the league saying, not again, and that's why now Kyle is going to have to innovate again. Like, you have to reinvent yourself. I say Andy Reid, 67 years old, continues to reinvent himself year after year, game after game. And Kyle has done that as well. And he'll have to do it again to reinvent himself.
How does he do that, Peter? How does he do that? First of all, love Steve Young. Great commentary there.
Great
He
does
guy. Need to reinvent himself. The question is, how? How does he reinvent himself? I have a solution, of course, but I'll throw it to you first.
Well, thank you for the bone. I thought he was going to do it this year. I really got the sense going into training camp this year that the Niners were going to have a different looking offense and that it would be a little bit more spread out. Certainly under center was going to be phased out to a significant level, and that it would be more of a Brock Purdy-led offense. And that's something that had been hinted at late last year when some adjustments were starting to be made by opposing defenses. And it's something that, talking to people before training camp that I'd like to think are in the know. Otherwise, good luck to them on the open market here this upcoming offseason. Like, there is... Sorry, James Foster.
Steve Young's not a football guy. James Foster. Come on.
No,
James.
I think that's the best joke I've heard all day. So shout out to James Foster.
James is not joking, unfortunately. But go ahead.
Oh, really? That's incredible. Okay. Yeah, Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, wait a second. Now Richard's like, did someone just say Steve Young isn't a football guy?
I can tell
Yeah.
you this: the conversations that I've been able to have with Steve Young, and they're more frequent than I deserve. He and Steve has always put up with my nonsense because we do have a lot of same like sort of big picture ideas about football. Maybe that's why I love Steve so much. But every time I talk to him, he always says something extremely poignant, as we just heard. That just it's the perfect button to press. I've never left a conversation with Steve Young on the air, off the air, wherever, to where I haven't felt like energized to go like watch some football and talk to some people. The man is mythical in my mind. So let's not be going in on Steve Young. Trust me, it's clear you haven't met him if you think that Steve Young ain't a football guy. But I thought that offense was going to come this year, and it just didn't. And I don't know if that was me having a misread on the situation and some other folks having a misread on the situation, or if it just couldn't come to fruition because they never got to have a training camp, right? Because Christian McCaffrey's almost immediately injured. You don't have Ayuk. And then it was just the cavalcade of who's sitting out today. And this general sense of, well, we got enough talent. We'll figure it out. Well, it will all come together. You know what? Let's just put McCaffrey on the bench. We could play him against the Jets, but wouldn't it be better if we just cryogenically froze him for like the first 8 weeks of the year? Because shit, we don't need him. We're so good. We got so much talent. We don't even need him. That was their general attitude. I think that just being up against the wall, understanding that the talent isn't superfluous like it used to be, is going to force Kyle to have to get into the lab and build an offense that is more tailored to Brock Purdy. And this is still an offense that in a lot of ways is tailored for Jimmy. Well, it's an offense that's in a lot of ways tailored to Jimmy Garoppolo still. You're still constantly searching for zone looks. And this is one of the reasons why I was a big fan of the Pearsall draft pick, because he's somebody who isn't somebody who needs zone looks to get open. It's why, even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the contract and the wide receiver bubble, as I call it, like I can justify signing Brandon Ayuk. You have, in the case of Juwan Jennings and Deebo Samuel being the key amongst them, two wide receivers who need zone looks. Brock is the best zone quarterback in the NFL, bar none. And he's one of the worst against man-to-man. And Steve is 100% right. Every defense in the league is watching Kyle Shanahan. In particular, they're watching the Super Bowl and what Steve Spagnuolo did and said, oh, we'll just do that. Arizona, Jonathan Gannon, week 5. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the dudes to play man-to-man defense. But they saw on tape that that's how you slow down the Niners. That's how you get Kyle out of his game, because he's still running the Garoppolo offense to a major degree. And if you don't have Christian McCaffrey, you don't have easy access valves to free yards when defenses give you a look that you finally can handle in man-to-man. Week 5, Arizona, Jonathan Gannon, without the personnel, said, fuck it. We're going full man-to-man, and we'll lose by 40 or win by 4. And they won by 4. And every team since then has said, well, shit, if Arizona can do it, we can do it. And it didn't work for Dallas, who tried it, but it sure
Why
as hell
are they
worked
not
for
getting open against man-to-man?
They can't get open against man-to-man.
Why?
And they need to get rid of these zone receivers. They need to get to a more spread offense. Brock is more comfortable in that, ironically, without the arm. That's what they need to do.
But why are they better? Why can't they defend? Why can't they go against man-to-man?
Well, because Debo and JJ can't separate.
Yeah. It's the weapons. They're slow.
Of course.
They have bad weapons.
But now you have to be
against man-to-man
pragmatic about what
coverage.
you have. You have to understand what you have, and you have to shift it. You have to shift it because, hey, the league is adjusted. Kyle has used up the adjustments that he has made over the last couple of years. One, Debo goes to the backfield. Well, that turns him into Offensive Player of the Year. Now everyone's in on that. They know, hey, let Debo run it. He's not that good of a runner. That gadget's not worth as much. So what's he do? Oh, let me give you Christian McCaffrey, right? And then everyone goes, oh, you know what? Let him be a receiver, and he's going to gash us, but like one guy can't beat us, right? But we'll just play man-to-man. We'll take out the receivers. And if Christian McCaffrey catches 9 passes for 150 yards, well, so be it. You can't beat everybody. We'll take our chances. But now Christian McCaffrey's not in there. And instead of having an entire new offense built around man-to-man beaters on the outside and not having to have zone and all the space that it provides, they're still force-feeding Debo, as we saw on Thursday. They're still playing Juwan Jennings at a position he can't play effectively They're doing all of these things as if Jimmy Garoppolo is still the quarterback, and it looks nothing like this offense that I saw last year, which was trending in this direction, and I thought they'd go the full way this year. As in all things with the 49ers in 2024, they tried to run it back, and now they're a year too late.
The bottom line is on this thing is that it's no different than basketball. If you don't have a 3-point shooter, they don't defend the 3-point line.
That's right.
If you don't have anybody out there that can make a three, why are they going to extend the defense out there? They're not. They're just going to pack it in. Why do teams play this pace and space NBA game? To create more room for everything else, to create space. The real estate is at a premium on the court in basketball, on the field in football. The real estate is at a premium. And so the Niners don't have any space creation. Offensive football is about nothing more. It's just about creating space. Yeah. Now, there's 3 ways to do it. Design, play design, power, or speed. And speed could be grouped as quickness as well.
Yeah.
The Niners aren't good in the red zone because they don't have any. They can't beat you with power because their offensive line can't uproot you out of there.
100%.
They can't beat you with speed because they don't have any speed. And then they can't beat you with play design because Kyle's play design in the red zone has been fucking atrocious this year.
Play design everywhere.
Outside of a couple of plays, the JJ play, was really nice, against Chicago. That was a beautifully designed play, but the play design's been totally mediocre. They don't have receivers that can get any kind of separation or any kind of quickness. I mean, they don't beat you with quickness. They don't beat you with speed. They can't beat you with power. They get in the red zone, they're fucked. They're better on third and goal from the 8 than they are on 3rd and goal from the 3.
Right.
I mean, that tells you everything you need to know right there.
Mm-hmm.
That they can't move anybody, so they'd rather be further out to give themselves more room. But in reality, they just don't create enough space because they're not. So, like, what did Philly do this year? Philly had problems last year. Philly was bad at the end of last year.
Yes.
Couldn't stop anybody. Their pass defense was a fucking joke.
Right.
They brought in Fangio. They brought in Kellen Moore. They brought in Mekhi Becton, put him at right guard. They signed Saquon Barkley, and now they're one of the best teams in pro football.
Right.
Now their defense is cooking, and they look like they could go to the Super Bowl, and their offensive line is wearing people down. So how does Shanahan reinvent himself? I think you have to reinvent yourself with personnel. Goodbye, Juszczyk.
Yes.
Ole Miss has a 300-pound defensive tackle named J.J. Pegues, who they're running on the goal line and in short yardage.
Yeah.
And he has not been denied all year.
Yeah.
He's an unbelievable athlete at 310 pounds. He's one of the fastest 310-pound guys I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
And he is fast like a sprinter. So he's 310 pounds, but he's got first and second step quickness and speed. You got to go watch this guy. They've used him on the goal line and in short yardage all year. He's perfect. Every time they've gone to him in short yardage, he's gotten the first. Every time they've gone to him on the goal line, he's gotten a touchdown. His name's J.J. Pegues. That's one way. That's one way to innovate is get rid of your small fullback and go get a big powerhouse fullback and do what the Eagles and the Ravens have
using
done.
The fullback. Go to an 11 personnel team.
How about this? Don't use a fullback. Have a backup defensive lineman. Save a roster spot.
Yeah.
Have a guy that can play defensive tackle and defense in a rotation, and then use him as your fullback and cut juice and save the money and save the roster spot. That's one. Two, it's a shitty receiver draft.
Yes.
Really bad. I was watching Luther Burden last night. He's probably the best. He's nothing.
Yeah.
He doesn't write. I don't like him.
I wouldn't draft him.
So I'm just saying.
And I went to
But it's a good free agent draft for the receiver that the Niners need. Who's out there? The Niners need speed. Tutu Atwell, Rondale Moore, McCole Hardman. They're all free agents, and they all aren't going to – they're all just, guys that you could get for very little. Go sign one or two of those guys. Go show up next year with the same weapons, but now you got Rondale Moore and Tutu Atwell, and watch how much differently teams defend you. It'll be night and day. If you have speed, they have to honor it. If you don't have speed, they don't have to honor it. You don't have speed, they don't have to honor it. There's bodies everywhere on defense. If you had an Atwell or Rondale Moore, one, it's not going to cost you that much, and two, I think it could really open up the offense. So that's one.
Yeah.
Reinvent yourself by getting some world-class fucking speed and getting some bigger bodies on the line of scrimmage. Invest in your offensive line. Get another running back. And if you can get a great running back, get a great running back. Chris says Rondale Moore and Tutu Atwell aren't moving the needle. It's not about moving the needle. It's about moving the free safety. It's about moving the coverage back. If you watch the All-22, and I know from that comment that you don't, if you watch the All-22, when you have a team that has speed, guys are leaning back.
Yeah.
Guys are turned like halfway and they're leaning back because they're worried about the guy running by them. If you watch DBs against the Niners, nobody's leaning back. Everybody's leaning and lurching forward because there is no receiver that can run past you. When you're putting Debo and Jawan Jennings and Kittle in the pattern, you're sitting there and you're basically saying, hey, we're not going deep. We can't go deep. And teams defend it that way. I mean, and if you don't, I can literally bust out tape and show you pictures pre-snap of teams that have speed and that are running a certain coverage and that exact same coverage against the Niners who have no speed. And you'll see the difference in their posture. You'll see the difference in their positioning. You're going to see the difference in where they stand, where they're standing on the field. It's quite a bit different. And that's one way to reinvent. Add some speed, add some power. There's three ways to win. Kyle, it can't all be on Kyle's play calling. He's got to inject some speed and some power, 100%. Or they're not going to do anything. They're not going to be able to, Philly wins in the red zone a lot. They win with the tush push. What's that? That's power. Right. They win with their big physical offensive line with Mailata and all these guys. That's power. Sometimes they win with play design. Sometimes they win with quickness or speed. But they've got all three elements available to them. The Niners cannot win with power. They cannot win with speed. So unless Shanahan dials up awesome, play ingenuity and fools somebody, they're not going to score with regularity in the red zone. They've proven it this year. So stop leaning 100% on Kyle and go Kyle, the GM, or Kyle and John, the general managers, co-general managers. That's the main problem with the Niners. It's not Purdy. Well, it's not Kyle per se. It's the play caller. It's Kyle, the general manager, who said, I gotta have Debo. I gotta have Ayuk. I've got to have CJ Beathard. I've got to have play. All these. I've got to have Dante Pettis. I've got to have Jalen Hurd. Guess what? I've got to have Joe Williams. You know what you got to have? You got to have a fucking 3-week vacation while we're drafting. That's what you got to have. You got to take it off because the skill set between sequencing and calling and devising plays and looking at four corners, 4 guards, 4 tackles, and saying those guys are good, those guys aren't, totally different skill set. It's not the same skill set. So just because Kyle's good at one, we shouldn't assume that he's good at the other. Like, we would never, ever, who's the best general manager of all time? Ron Wolf or who knows, Jim Finks. Guess what those guys never did? They never dabbled as the offensive coordinator.
Right.
Why? Because there's a totally different skill set.
Yeah.
For every Bill Walsh who had great personnel chops and could call plays, there's a million guys who can only do one or the other. So it's the odds that you would be blessed with the ability to call plays and the ability to have this amazing insight into personnel. I mean, very few guys are gifted with both. Jimmy Johnson was a very good play caller, very good football coach, and a great personnel guy. But there are very few. Mike Holmgren, undone by his drafting. Bill Belichick, undone by his drafting. Bill Walsh, to some degree, undone by his drafting. Kyle Shanahan, I think, has been undone partly by his drafting.
Oh, without question. But ultimately, he is still the chef that has to put together the meal. And even though he does not have prime ingredients, he is still held to a higher standard than most. And I just don't think that he's cooked a very good meal with the ingredients that he has. And I think that he has adequate ingredients to at least make it interesting. And that's
We
not
should have
what
ran the ball in this last game. I mean, what are you doing?
I think they
What
should
are
have
you
thrown it out
doing?
of the backfield in this last game. That's what you do against men. Why are you not using the Christian McCaffrey game plan with Isaac Guerrero as your running back? He's the closest thing on your roster you have to him, and they're playing man-to-man. That's the
How
whole
about
point.
this one leaving? Cowing's got a 4.38 40. He's not any part of the offense at all.
I mean,
And Cowing should not be returning punts, but he should be playing from scrimmage, and they've got it all backed up. I mean, it's like Cowing could create plays down the field, but doesn't get an opportunity to. And then he looks very unsure of himself as a return man, but he gets tons of opportunities there.
I can't explain it, and I'd like
Yeah.
to see him in the final 3 games. And I haven't gotten a good reason as to why they haven't played him. So I have
Well,
to
they're
just
playing him, but they're playing him as a punt returner.
well,
Only.
why they're not giving him snaps from scrimmage is
I know they
beyond.
act like this is like they act like they're it's not a football team. They act like they're a street gang, and this is all everything's about seniority. You know, it's like Debo's been here, man. You don't know how many people he's taken down for us. So he
Well,
he
he's about
gets
to
the
take you
ball.
all
It's like
down.
stop. This isn't a street gang. How about let's just put the guys out there that can do it
That's
and not
what
worry
bothers me.
about the past.
At least let's find out if they can do it and not just use the practice field as the proxy in which they're not getting looks anyway.